Homicide 1906. The case of 43-year-old Emma Eva Reeve. Emma Reeve was convicted of the manslaughter of George Fox Hamilton. She stabbed him with a knife in the left armpit on the night of the 28th of May 1906. When the police arrived, she said that he had got up a knife to her and that she had got up a knife to him, and that he had then fallen on the knife. George Hamilton used to be the landlord of the Fiend Arms public house where they both used to live, but when he gave up the place in March 1906, they then went to live in the house next door at 8 Fiend Street with two of Emma Reeves' children. On the evening of the 28th of May 1906, George Hamilton had been in the Fiend Arms where he had been drinking. Earlier in the evening, Emma Reeve had complained of feeling bad and had decided to go out for an omnibus ride and had returned at about 10 p.m. Soon after, she went into the Fiend Arms to see George Hamilton. George Hamilton was drunk whilst Emma Reeve was sober. After they returned to 8 Fiend Street and went into the sitting room on the first floor, which was a room stacked with furniture and very little space left. When they entered the room, George Hamilton accused Emma Reeve of going out with another man, which she denied. Her son, who had also been in the room, said that he then went upstairs, but after hearing some scuffling came back down and found George Hamilton trying to push Emma Reeve down the stairs. He said that he separated them and then went back into the sitting room. George Hamilton then went to stand by the window whilst Emma Reeve was stood near the wardrobe. Emma Reeve then asked George Hamilton to go upstairs to bed, but George Hamilton was drunk and excited, and there was some wrangling for 5 or 6 minutes or longer, during which George Hamilton called Emma Reeve some very vile names. Also in the room was a little table with breakfast laid out for the other brother for the next morning, with some knives and things on it. After a while, George Hamilton picked up a carving knife from the table with his right hand and rushed towards Emma Reeve, who had also picked up a knife. Emma Reeve said, "I've got a knife as well as you." However, George Hamilton was drunk and he tripped on the floor where the 2 strips of carpet joined in the middle, and he fell onto Emma Reeve. The son then rushed to pick George Hamilton up and helped him towards the window, but he didn't get very far, and so he helped him to a chair where he sat down. The son said that he then noticed that there was a knife sticking out of George Hamilton, and so he pulled it out and put it on the table. Emma Reeve then said, "Oh God, George, what is the matter with you?" And George Hamilton replied, "I am bleeding." The coachman who knew George Hamilton and Emma Reeve said that he had been in the Fiend Arms on the night of the 28th of May 1906 with some other people and saw George Hamilton come in, saying that he was quite sober. He said that Emma Reeve came in about 10 minutes later. The coachman said that he left the house just before closing time and went to stand outside on the street opposite 8 Fiend Street with some other people. He said that the first floor window was open and that there was a dim light on in the room and that he could see George Hamilton and Emma Reeve inside and could hear them jangling. The coachman said that he next saw George Hamilton come to the window and say, "Police," and then fall back. He said that he then heard Emma Reeve say, "George, dear, speak to me." He then saw one of the sons leave the house and go for the doctor, who arrived soon after. The doctor said that he arrived in the early hours of the 29th of May 1906 and found George Hamilton in the first floor front room sitting in an armchair, breathing heavily with his head thrown back. He said there was a great deal of blood about the room. The doctor said that when he examined George Hamilton, he found a vertical wound 1.5 inches below the apex of the left armpit that went forwards and upwards and was about 5/8 of an inch deep. He said that George Hamilton was wailing and had said that he wished it had been his wife instead of him. He died within half an hour of the doctor arriving. At the trial, Emma Reeve was found guilty of manslaughter. She had already been in custody for 2 months and was sentenced to a further 1 month's imprisonment.